Hey guys, Jeannine here with another review for you. And yes, it's been a while since I've done a solo review, but today I am talking about The Flash, spoiler review of The Flash. Typically I do these with Morgan, but Morgan has decided to not watch this movie, so I am on my own here talking everything about The Flash movie. So let's just get right into it. So, The Flash, very controversial superhero movie, obviously with Ezra Miller, obviously with the state of DC switching hands, getting rid of basically everything from the Snyderverse and starting fresh. So, this movie really, I don't know that it needed to be released. Based off of what we got, based off of the hype that it had, I was still excited about it because Michael Keaton is my Bruce Wayne. Michael Keaton is my Batman. He's my all-time favorite. He was what was drawing me to this movie. But based off of what we got, I don't know that this movie needed to be released. I think it very well could have been shelved, like they did with Batgirl. And it just disappoints me because I'm like, I think I would have rather liked to see whatever it was with Batgirl. Highlighting a new character, highlighting these new directors, Brendan Fraser, Leslie Grace, giving them a big shot to do something cool. But I don't know if that was the fear of female-led superhero movies not doing well and that whole stigma, but they were kind of, James Gunn was very adamant about this movie just was not releasable and really had kind of a negative energy in the thought of releasing this movie. So, I really was putting some trust in his opinion and his thought because he's proven to be, great with this medium. And was putting his trust in as well when he was saying, despite everything, everyone needs to see The Flash. Despite Ezra, despite, these characters kind of being irrelevant after this, you need to see this movie. So I was like, okay, this movie must be good enough to, I guess, partly overlook all of that. And I don't think it did. I don't think it was worth overlooking those, early on concerns. I will say overall, I did have fun with the movie. I did enjoy a lot of elements of it, but just how it ended felt like it kind of rendered everything pointless. The Flash didn't really have an arc, and we kind of just pull an X3 and kill everybody in a very pointless way for nothing, basically. So, just right off the bat, let's talk about the things that I did like. I liked the opening sequence. I thought it was great to kind of see that the Justice League was still in action, still working together. They may not all be together at once because everyone is kind of off doing their own things. Superman, we see him doing something. We have Wonder Woman coming in when she can. I wish they would have found a way to bring back Ray Fisher even for a little bit, give him a bit of redemption because they treated him terribly and he was amazing as Cyborg. But I loved Ben Affleck as Batman. I liked that big kind of opening sequence. It was a cool way to open the movie. And then we set up the emotional stakes and the Flashpoint kind of storyline. And I liked all of that. I liked that build. And then after we're kind of getting into that, then we kind of hit a slow point where there's a bit of a lull and it doesn't really pick up again until the Barrys go to see Bruce, Michael Keaton's Bruce. And then there's a really great setup to the finale. But then the finale is a bit of letdown in its own right. So there were some fun elements. I liked how the Barrys played off of each other. I did like the emotional stakes and the emotional moments with Barry and his mom. And when he's with her, uh, in the kind of time jump, when he's having to change things back and let her go again and say goodbye to her again, that was really well played and really emotional as well. The ending, I think the ending was a fun kind of tag ending. And I did appreciate the cameos. Like, I thought that was a fun idea, and playing on that nostalgia. And I saw it as honoring these characters who have had such a great legacy in DC. So I appreciated it for that. But the fact that it was done with the really gummy CGI, which I will get into, just kind of took away from it a little bit. So I did like the idea of it. And also the fact that if you're going to do this whole big legacy thing, there are people who were involved in DC in a big way that are still alive that you could get consent for some of these cameos, and they didn't do that. So that was kind of a weird thing as well, unless they did and they said no. Anyway, we'll get into that. So those are just some of the things I liked about it. I did like Sasha Kaye as Supergirl. I wish she had more to do. I wish she was in it more because she was great. She looked amazing. And Michael Keaton was brilliant. He definitely felt like the Bruce from '89, from '92, and this is that same Bruce years later, old, living on his own without his Alfred, taking care of himself, but still keeping really sharp and still very intelligent and studied and a genius and tactical and in great shape to still fight. Yes, this definitely, he felt like the same person, and I loved that. So Michael Keaton was amazing. So on to the things I didn't care for. I mean, again, like the gummy CGI, those falling babies looked awful. They might as well have been the dancing baby from Ally McBeal. Because it just did not look good. It looked so gummy. And the fact that this movie was in post production for so long and they couldn't make sure that these effects looked perfect is kind of ridiculous. And I guess maybe it's because they already had put so much money into it to begin with that they just didn't have money to make it look good. But it's like the way James Gunn was talking about Batgirl seems like the way he should have been talking about this movie, because it just wasn't watchable, it just wasn't releasable. These effects should not have been releasable. These were not up to quality. And I know Andy Muschietti was talking about justifying it and saying it's not supposed to be perfect when we're in Barry's time dome. They're supposed to look a little off because it's in his head and all of this, which I could get behind if that was the only place where the effects looked wonky. But it was all over the movie. Even like I loved how the Barrys played off each other. I liked the scenes that they were in together and kind of arguing, and our Barry, who was already kind of immature, having to step up and be the mature one and wrangle his younger self, and that whole kind of frustration of him having to step up. But when they're in scenes together, you can tell that there's a CGI face on one of them at moments, and it just pulled me out a little bit because, I'm used to movies like The Parent Trap, even something as old as 1946's A Stolen Life, where Bette Davis is playing twin sisters and they're in scenes together. The fact that you're able to do these things practically and they look great, but you opt for the CGI face and it just looks like a CGI face and it's just very distracting. So yeah, like it seemed like there was CGI done in moments where you didn't need CGI, like Michael Keaton's fight sequences when he's in the bat suit. It felt like a lot of those felt like CGI as well and not kind of done practically or with stunt guys and stuff like that. So it felt like and it looked like a lot of things that could have been done practically were also done with CGI, and so I didn't really like that either. Kind of between Barry going back to the time when his mother was alive and getting to Michael Keaton's Batman, that kind of space in between was a little bit slow and dragged a little bit, so it doesn't really pick up again until we get to Michael Keaton. So that was kind of a bummer to have that bit of a lull in the story at that point. Yeah, just it builds really well to that finale, but then the finale is just such a letdown. You realize Barry doesn't really have an arc, and you realize Batman and Supergirl kind of die for nothing. They don't even die like saving the day or stopping Zod. So even if their sacrifices came out of saving the day somehow, that would have been fine. But the fact that they just keep dying and nothing gets solved, Zod still wins, um, feels kind of pointless. So then we just build to this finale where all the stakes are kind of sucked out of it because Zod ultimately wins. We have Batman and Supergirl dying without saving the day. So at least if they had them die in all of these iterations, but still at least sacrificing themselves and having their deaths mean something, I think that would have been a lot better. And then, just Barry constantly trying to bring them back. They win the day, but he doesn't want to lose anybody else. So he keeps going back and going and back and going back to save them after they've done the sacrifice. I was talking to my friend and friend of the channel, Brandon Hanna, and he was very frustrated with this movie and basically kind of fixed this finale in 2 seconds because he did mention that, yeah, like their deaths needed to mean something. Have Kara beat Zod and win and become the Supergirl of that universe. And, you know, if not have Bruce survive, have him die, but have him die sacrificing himself to help win and beat Zod, so that his death would have meant something. Because just imagine his line of, Barry saying, I couldn't bring you back, and then him saying, you already did. Because I loved that line. I loved that delivery. I loved the significance of it. But imagine how special that would have been had he said something like that after sacrificing himself to help win. I think it would have meant more. So it just feels like their deaths are completely pointless. It renders going to find them pointless because you take them there to beat Zod only for them to die and not beat Zod. So that just felt like completely pointless. And now, like you did all this for what? Because they ended up dying and Zod still wins. So ultimately, that just rendered bringing these characters in feeling completely pointless, which I just did not like. And the build to that was so well done. So I think they could have just stuck the landing had they worked that ending differently. So then we get into these cameos and the universe is kind of colliding. I thought it was an interesting twist instead of actually doing Reverse Flash and that whole thing, having this younger version of Barry just constantly going back and going back and going back. And, we've proven that he doesn't really listen. He does his own thing. He's very kind of naive in a lot of ways and new to these powers. So it would make sense that this is the version of Barry who would want to keep going back and not be really paying attention to reason and not wanting to give up. And turning into this warped version of him who just wouldn't stop giving up trying to fix this moment in time. So I liked that concept of it, of him kind of ultimately being the big bad of this whole finale. So I think that worked. And then the universes colliding and the cameos. I liked the idea of this. I liked it as a way to honor everyone who contributed something to these really special, popular characters in the lexicon of DC. But just how they looked didn't look really great. And I know there's that kind of uncanny valley, and how appropriate is it to use the likeness of people who are no longer alive, particularly with George Reeves and Christopher Reeve. Like, I liked the idea of it. I liked the nostalgia of what that moment was trying to do, but I don't know that the execution was really well done. And if you were going to go for that, then go all out, because there were some actors who are still alive who were part of DC that you could have asked, that I don't know if they did or not. Like, where was Brandon Routh? Like, they totally, I felt so bad for Brandon Routh that they didn't include him in this. And Val Kilmer, I mean, you have Clooney coming in at the end, but you don't have Val. People who are alive who you could ask permission to use their likeness in this. So I liked the idea of it, getting to see, honor these all these iterations of these great characters, but I don't know that the execution was really well done. And of course, the biggest one, the Nick Cage, the lost version from the Superman Lives lost Superman movie. And having him fight a giant spider, I think that was kind of a fun thing. I'm sure most people who maybe didn't know what that was probably have looked it up and know by now, but I have it here, the Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, the John Schnepp documentary about this lost Nicolas Cage um, Superman movie. And how the producer, John Peters, he was like Barbara Streisand's hairstylist and somehow got into making movies. And he was the producer of this movie, and he had these stipulations. Kevin Smith tells the story in the documentary. He's also told the story a few times. You can find it online, where this John Peters guy had like three stipulations. He didn't want Superman to wear the suit, he didn't want him to fly, and he wanted him to be fighting a giant mechanical spider. So it's just kind of this in joke seeing this Superman fight the mechanical spider. So obviously this movie didn't happen, but John Peters went on to produce The Wild Wild West, where there is a mechanical spider. So he got his big spider that he wanted so badly. And I was also kind of looking up that poster because I was making a TikTok about this. And in every poster, the spider is on it. So I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if this man was like, I want that mechanical spider on every promotional poster. So weird guy, but that is why. So it was kind of a fun in joke, and I thought of John Schnapp and this documentary. So if you haven't watched The Death of Superman Lives, it's really hard to find online, to stream, or to even buy the Blu-ray, but I think you can find it on YouTube streaming. So please check it out if you haven't. It's a really great documentary, great interviews with Tim Burton and Kevin Smith and John Peters, and really talking about, and footage and all this stuff about, what happened to this lost Nicolas Cage Superman movie. So I thought it was kind of cool that they tried to add a little nod in there. So I'm really kind of curious to see what Nick Cage thought of all that. If they talked to him or asked him if he's seen it, I'd be interested to see like his thoughts on that little scene. But when the giant spider came out, I kind of chuckled to myself, I have to say. So yeah. Then we get to the finale, and he's able to have figured out a way to free his dad, but now he's in a universe where Bruce is George Clooney. So also, in talking to Brandon, in his take, he was like, well, I would make it clear that this version of Barry, he thinks he's in his universe, but then when the George Clooney comes out, he realizes he's in a different universe, but he opts to just stay in this universe because it's a universe where his father is free. So I think they could have made that more clear, because it's really confusing because you have Bruce now being George Clooney in this universe, but Iris left him a note relating to the things that happened in his universe. So for me, it just wasn't clear, like, what was going on with these universal antics that happened by the end. So, yeah, I think there were some solid things here, particularly in terms of Michael Keaton. He was amazing, getting to see the replication of the Batcave and his mansion, and seeing this version of Bruce feeling very much like the Bruce slash Batman that we knew in those older Tim Burton movies was great. I think Kara, Supergirl, was great too. I just wish she had more to do. And yeah, just that kind of slow lull, but I think there was good, back and forth between the two Barrys, some fun set pieces, but really sloppy effects, and no really strong character arcs, and kind of things that build to something big, but then ultimately feel like it is rendered pointless by the end. So yeah, I found some things to enjoy about The Flash, but it wasn't so amazing that it was worth releasing with all the controversy around it, I think. I particularly would have preferred them giving something like Batgirl a chance to highlight great actors, new, wonderful POC directors. I think the composer was a female composer. We rarely see female composers, especially on big movies like this. So it would have been a really great opportunity for representation and highlighting actors who were in it, like Brendan Fraser, this whole boom that he was in. That would have been just a nice little cherry on top of everything that came out recently for him. Leslie Grace getting this big shot. So yeah, I think something like that would have been more deserving of all of this attention rather than the Flash movie. I don't think what we got by the end was good enough to warrant even it being released. And now look, it's losing money. So was it really worth it to you to shelve a movie that was completed, that everyone who made it felt really good about, to put out this movie that stars somebody who's pretty problematic, starring characters who are going to be rendered pointless after this movie? Yeah. So overall, some fun things in here, but definitely not this great superhero movie. So yeah, those are my spoiler thoughts of The Flash. Let me know what you thought of The Flash in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Do all of the things. Hit the notification bell for all the stuff we have going on in the channel. Of course, we have our Monday show every Monday, Monday Madness, where we talk fun things. We actually do our reviews typically on there as well. So check that out. You can also check out the podcast feed, the It's a Wonderful podcast feed. We have our shows Morgan hasn't seen and It's a Wonderful podcast there, so you can check those out as well. So thank you guys for checking out another review, and I will see you in the next one.